Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar with Danish Sound Cluster. Today, we are having Roskilde Festival and Meyer Sound as our guests with the sub-headline, Co-creating and Optimizing the Audience Experience. My name is Jeppe Lindegaard. I am the Event and Project Manager here at Danish Sound Cluster. And just to give you people an idea who don't know who Danish Sound Cluster is, we are a member organization in the audio industry, sharing knowledge, experience, and new research, and building relationships in the sound community and facilitating new collaborations to boost innovation. Today, we have Morten Büchert, who is an associate professor at Rhythmic Conservatory in Copenhagen and project manager at Roskilde Festival. And we have Tholema, who is the technical services manager at Meyer Sound. So in the audience today, we have a wide range of sound professionals from GN Hearing, DPA Microphones, ICE Power, Sennheiser, Sonova Group, Indismatic, III, and VS Audiology, plus a lot more profiles. And just letting you know that questions in today's webinar are very welcome, and your participation is extremely important to us as well. So please leave us your questions in the Q&A section. And in the panel today, we have, like I said, Morten Büchert, who's the Associate Professor at Rhythmic Conservatory, Copenhagen, and Project Manager at Roskilde Festival Sound. Morten has been creating music and working with audio engineering since the age of 15. You'll most likely find him working in the studio, doing live sound at a concert, or teaching. As Associate Professor, he teaches music production at the Rhythmic Conservatory, and in between teaching, producing, and engineering, he works freelance for Denmark's radio, and he's an audio consultant for Roskilde Festival and has been so for a number of other Danish festivals. Hello to you, Morten. You want to say hi to the audience?
Yes, I will. Hi.
Thank you. And guesting today from Meyer Sound, we have Tholema, who's the Technical Services Manager. Now, Dennis, can you please give just a very short introduction to yourself and your background to the audience today?
Sure. Welcome. I'm Dennis. I live in Hamburg. I work for Meyer Sound since 10 years now, a little bit more than 10 years. And I started in this business professionally in 2002, so a little more than 20 years. I have a degree in event engineering. I did my apprenticeship in Hamburg. And I worked at a company that was a big Meyer Sound rental house. And that's where I got to meet a lot of professional sound engineers and also system engineers that were working with all the Meyer Sound products. And I was then working at that same company as a project manager audio, so planning events or especially on audio. And I was part of the Olympic Games in 2008 in Beijing. And after that, I became freelancer. So I was working as a freelancer, mainly front of house engineer, but also did some monitor engineering jobs and also system engineering. And then I started working at Meyer. And I had my first Roskilde Festival in 2014. And since then, love to come back and be part of that festival. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you very much, Dennis. Great to meet you and a warm welcome. And thank you for joining Danish Sound Cluster activities today. Now I will actually leave the moderator job with you, Morten. So I will just kick back and enjoy the fun and leave it to you guys. So thank you very much for joining and see you on the other side.
Great. Thank you, Jeppe. So I guess this gives us everybody a little bit of a COVID vibe to be in this Zoom meeting presenting. At least I taught a lot during COVID on Zoom. but it's fun. I prepared a little slide. I'm going to share it now. Hope you can see everything. Let me just stop sharing and start sharing again just to make sure our sound is coming through. Yes. All right. So this will be a little bit of an introduction to what Roskilde Festival is. Dennis and Morten is already eaten up. And I hope it's not Dennis Sound Cluster. Sorry, I had to do that. We'll go through all this stuff, and maybe at the end, towards the system design issues, it's going to be much more interesting than just the basic knowledge. But I think it proves a point to build some kind of knowledge about what the festival is and where we ended up with the partnership. So let's dive into that. So back in '71, the festival looked like this. I'm sure it sounded really great, but I'm also sure it didn't really cover the entire area of listening. And I'm sure there was also a lot of problem. Maybe it just didn't really sound great back then. It turned into this setup, which also then turned into this one in 2018. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that's the first year Meyer Sound was the partner of Roskilde Festival. So as you can see, it's a huge endeavor. It's a field just outside of Copenhagen in Roskilde, to the fourth largest city once it's operational. And the playing time is throughout 4 days of the main events, but the festival campsite is open for 7 days in total. Everybody's a volunteer who works at Roskilde, apart from the professionals, and that proves a point, because the idea and the purpose of the festival group is it's a non-profit. So every year, all the money that's generated in the festival system is handed out, and it's handed out to these initiatives. For example, this mimics the poster of whoever's playing at the festival. So you can see there's a lot of money being handed out. I believe it's to the total sum of 450 million kroner since 1971 that's been handed out. So it's quite a number, and it's doing well outside of it. It's a huge operation because with the 8 stages and 200 shows each year, a lot can go wrong, and nobody knows if it's going to work or not. So that's what we're up against. The festival's strategic ambition is to create communities that are open, engaged, moving people through art, music, sustainability, and active participation. And that sort of framework also sifts into the partnership with Meyer Sound, which comes out of the audio production. So before 2018, this was the idea of how we undertook sound at the festival. There was various PA companies being hired to it. The PA companies brought in equipment and engineers, and the contracts were negotiated for every 2nd or 4th year. Some longer, some less. But it was a very dispersed field of contractors, basically. The scope of quality was the supplier's experience and also the experience with the festival. So building a festival each year in the same campground with sort of like the same setup and sort of like the same people, but maybe not, and maybe not with the same equipment. It just takes a lot of experience to manage it, to be ready for the large crowds, also because of safety, but also because of new equipment coming in. So that was kind of, to some extent, outsourced outside of the festival scope, and thus also the quality. The new paradigm came out in 2009, sorry. I asked, as a sound consultant for the festival, I've been there since 2001, so it's a really long time. Actually, also transferring from analog consoles to digital consoles, and from point source speakers primarily to line array speakers. So I've had my hands on a lot of stuff, and I asked the festival these 3 elements if we could come up with a new vision to get what would be optimal, to get what we need, and to how can we develop the festival and the people taking part of it. That was a framework. So we set out to figure out, can we find a supply or a product manufacturer to partner up with instead of just having a supplier. Just having a supplier would mean, and I've experienced that firsthand, that we would only get what was in the warehouse and the people in the warehouse, and not necessarily what we need or what would be optimal. So that framed the basis of the thought process. The the objective would then also be to find a partner with shared values, technological knowledge, and all that stuff that we don't know about. The partnership arrived with Meyer Sound for the first year in 2018, which was a revolution, but it was also groundbreaking in the sense that we actually departed with the previous way of working and honed in on one manufacturer. There's a lot of critique in that, but the overall ambition was to reach even further than just the limits of just having one contractor or several contractors at each stage. So the partnership consists of this framework. Roskilde Festival has the framework and the job, so to say. Meyer Sound delivers knowledge in the sense of system design and the audio ambition on our behalf. Victory is a Danish vendor or supplier that supplies the equipment. And then Roskilde Festival has their own sound engineers. We call them RF techs, not radio frequency techs, but Roskilde Festival techs. And the engineers that are operating the boards and operating the stages are being educated at the festival, and previous to the festival, and we try to develop them. All these consequences for Roskilde Festival, we had a different take on QA. It just changes everything, because now we actually have a partner that which sole focus for us is to raise the quality, and they can innovate both outside but also within the framework, which is a huge advantage. We can develop new stuff. We can do research. We do that with DTU and Aalborg University on different elements. I imagine, and Dennis, you can maybe say something to this a little later, the consequences for Meyer Sound is that you can research in new areas of audio delivery, stuff that's not accessible in just manufacturing a loudspeaker and optimizing that, but also how to deploy it and what's needed in that. More knowledge gained, and PR, marketing, and sales has a unique opportunity to display all the speakers in the Meyer Sound range. So it's a live event where everybody can take part, but also experience the products. For the sound engineers, we focused in on changing up the way we pay them, and also have a set focus on the working hours or mental health issues for that. The working conditions are improved, and most of them reply back to us that they actually experience improved quality of life with this new paradigm, where they're not hired by the company to take part or take responsibility, but they are part of the festival, creating something larger than themselves, which is all great. Here's a little video from one of the training sessions. We'll just listen to a couple of minutes of it. Today we commence the second part of the training program of our freelance sound engineering staff, RF techs we call them, and they are now being trained by Bob McCarthy and Michael Pohl and Dennis Tholema from Meyer Sound in both physics and basic audio transmission and how the speakers work. And they are all professional freelance sound engineers, not affiliated with any company, but freelancers. And we know, and we have a feeling that it's paramount importance to train them, not because they don't know anything, but we want to expand what they know.
It's unique for us to partner with such an established organization and an ongoing festival. So it's a great learning experience for us, as well as a chance to do a very focused education that's not just on the product in general, but that's on specific application based on specific places at specific times.
Yeah, so that was Bob and me when I had longer hair. I'm not going back to that anytime soon, I think. But anyways, so this is just one part of the education, or the educational elements. We also focus on conflict management, team building aspects, psychology of what the artists are going through. And we discuss in a private but professional manner what we need to be better at what we do. So we focus not only on the technical aspects. See, sorry. Research and development. We've researched into noise pollution at the festival. It's an ongoing thing. We built year 2. We built something called sonic crystals, which you can Google yourself. It's an array of objects that phase out a certain frequency depending on depth and scale of the elements in front of a sound source. So that was really fun. And we also dived into weather stations and weather's effect at orange. So it's really fun to develop new stuff together. Maybe the next thing we'll look into could be something about artificial intelligence, but let's see. Not decided yet. That was a brief introduction about the festival itself. And now I have some questions for Dennis, because that's the way we thought it would be easier to address this this sharing of knowledge of what we do. Do you have sound on it, Dennis?
Yes.
Great. So let me just start out by asking you, Dennis, what does a system design process look for you guys at Meyer Sound?
What does it look like? We get a request by a customer or by a partner for a specific design, and then we ask some questions about performance criteria, for example. You know, what kind of music it is, what kind of event it is, for example, because with that we can define what kind of maximum SPL we would would need, for example, for an event. So, for example, in a classical venue where you have classical music, it has a different performance criteria than a live club, for example, or a festival site. And then it also depends on what kind of music you have, you know. If it's a pop festival or, you know, mainstream festival, if it's metal or EDM, you know, it all defines different you know, as I said, performance criteria. And you know, we try to achieve a certain SPL distribution over the field, and we try to aim to stay between plus minus 3 dB level difference from front of house. So that means, you know, from front of stage to the end of coverage. We try to stay in that 6 dB range. And for that, based on that, we decide where we want to put loudspeakers and what kind of loudspeakers.
So, and the system design process at Roskilde, does that differ in any way? I mean, it's a recurring event, so that, of course, has impacts.
Explain that a bit.
Well, coming back to the Roskilde Festival each year, you can, I guess you can improve each stage.
That's what we try, yes, every year. So when we look at the system design of Apollo, for example, it was completely different from what it is now. Also because the venue shape changed. The festival has ideas of, you know, changing the layouts of stages, or, you know, the audience areas. Maybe they get bigger, maybe they get smaller. You know, it depends on how many people they would like to have in front of each stage. That defines, you know, what is needed. And if we look at a stage like Orange Stage, for example, it's basically the same criteria all the time. You know, we have that 100-meter distance that we need to cover, and then it's, you know, we know the width. We know what kind of music is going to be played, because it's a mix of everything. Could be rock, could be pop, could be hip hop. So we try to be ready for all that kind of music. We try to, you know, every year when we walk around, and we walk around with basically every act. So Bob, for example, is, you know, as soon as the next band starts, he's just off and just walks the whole area of coverage, making sure that everything works appropriately. And then after the festival, we sit down internally together with the team from Roskilde Festival, so you and Lars and Thijs, to see what we can improve for next year. If there was a, you know, a gap, if there was an area that wasn't covered well enough, and we are talking about really, you know, that's high level complaints. You know, when we listen to stuff and when we look at stuff, it's not the way how 95% of the people in front of the stage are experiencing that event, for example. So, you know, sometimes it's about subwoofer placement, or, you know, if we can horizontally rotate the arrays a bit more to fill up the center area in front of the stage, you know, maybe we can reduce the center fill with that, and, you know, just small adjustments year after year after year, try to make it better and better and better. And I think we have been quite successful since with that. And I think the overall feedback is that the sound quality improved, and that's all that we aim for. So
that is the overall feedback, and there's also the specific feedback also from myself. So thank you for doing it. One fun comment that I remember we talked about from year one, that would be 2018, that the monitor position at stage left or the right side of orange stage had the same amount of 29 hertz that front of house did, 50 meters out. So of course the monitor engineers on stage were standing in huge amounts of sub, and in 2019 it would reduce by what I remember 24 dB or something like that. It was a huge reduction.
I think a little more, but yes.
At least adequate to stay sane in
Yeah.
a working environment where you're doing something else and listening to 29 hertz. So
yeah, we got that feedback too from visiting engineers, that they had trouble breathing on stage because of that amount of low end that we have. And the reason for that is because the festival offers a special solution for us to be able to fly, you know, 27 subs per side in an end-fire configuration, which is, you know, unique. There are not many places on planet Earth where you get that possibility. And the first year we focused on basically getting all the energy into the field, and flown subs help in the way that you have control about the horizontal and vertical coverage, and you don't kill the people that are standing, you know, in the first row with ground stacked subs. Because I mean, you know, we need to shoot 140 meters, and if you try to shoot 140 meters with ground stacked subs, if it's end fire, I think you can imagine how much energy is actually going on, or, you know, how much air is being moved on the floor. So having them flown just make sure that everybody on the floor is also enjoying the show, and we, you know, that way we can control even SBL coverage. So, you know, the people in the front experiencing, you know, the same level like the people in the back. At least that's our goal. And in 2018, we focused on getting as much energy as possible into the field. And because we had end fire, we had a little rejection to the rear. But we never thought about the monitor engineers basically standing underneath that array. So that then was a request that came from the festival, and also from, you know, our experience. How can we make it better next time? And that's when we changed the orientation. You know, before we had a staggered end fire that was, you know, going down. Basically, when you look at the array, you know, in the center axis of the array, just facing into the field. And for the second year in 2019, we changed that stagger to go upwards, which, you know, when you think about it, sounds weird, because then that beam would go up all the way in the air. But because it's also end fire, and we changed it from end fire to being a gradient end fire. So every array out of those 3 arrays was a gradient that was canceling out towards the rear. So we were adding maximum cancellation towards the rear and maximum summation into the front. And it was also, when you look at it, a pretty round bubble, pretty, you know, when it's cardioid. And with the energy that we had of the line array in front of it, we were able to steer that whole energy down again. So it was a plus for everything. And that way we were able to reduce the low end on stage by, you know, something between 24 and 32 dB or something, in a way that we had side fill subs on stage. And on one show was a hip hop artist. They had to push those side fill subs so much because they thought there's no low end out, and they wanted to have the same feeling, that they popped the breakers, because they draw so much power out of the side wheel subs that, you know, it was kind of funny, but it also showed us that the cancellation was working really, really good on stage, and we kept the stage really, really quiet without affecting the audience area. So that was one thing, and we kept that setup since, and because it's just working. So
Yeah, it seems like you solved one problem but created focus on another thing, the stage sound. That was way too clean, so to say. So, but let me ask you a really irritating question then, Dennis, because you know I will do that.
of course.
What do you guys need from Roskilde Festival to achieve the highest level of audio quality?
What we need from the festival?
Yeah.
Positive and negative feedback. That's, you know, positive. Everybody can handle positive feedback. But if you want to improve stuff, you need to be able to accept critics. And because only then, you know the areas where you really need to focus on. And that's the cool thing about the partnership between Roskilde and Meyer Sound is, you know, we have that open and transparent communication. So, you know, we can give critics, and they will never be received as, you know, negative in a way that it, you know, I don't know, that you go into a you know, that you start to block off, or, you know, that it has an impact on our relationship. So it's a good back and forth between, you know, the feedback loop is just working perfectly. So, and we need negative feedback in a way, so we know what we need to focus on to improve stuff. So, and I think that's not only for sound, that's in general. You need to be open for critics.
Sure. I mean, in my experience, and now we're just touting our own horn here, it's just great relationship. But it is a healthy relationship where there's open to a dynamic conversation that isn't asymmetrical towards one thing, being the festival's needs or Meyer Sound's wish to reduce cost or whatever it is.
Yep.
It's for a mutual common goal, and I think that's where we, at least to begin with, succeeded, and now are improving year on year.
It's also in a way that, you know, if we have ideas, we as Meyer Sound, if we have ideas that we would like to look into, because we have that full trust of the festival, of course, we guarantee that it doesn't have an impact on the performance itself. But, you know, at least we have the freedom to try out stuff like maybe, you know, EQ presets for certain array setups and all of that stuff, or, you know, trying to you know, different alignments and all of that stuff. You know, we have 100% trust of the festival, and the festival has, you know, they trust in us and we trust the festival. And it's a, you know, we can reach out and say, hey, we would like to try this next year, what do you think? And then we talk about it, and maybe that opens up room for more ideas. So it's, you know, it's a back and forth all the time. That's unique, I think.
Could you say, because that was one of my questions that I prepared about experiments. I mean, to what degree does experiments actually happen on your side?
Experiments?
Yeah, I mean, if we experiment with a new way of doing stuff or a new setup, I know you guys have your own Map 3D. You have this prediction software that can map out a lot of stuff in the proportions of scale that it has to be in, so we can kind of get an idea of it. But what about experimentations? How do you tackle that? Let's say your research department comes up with a crazy idea they want to research.
Then we will try that. And if that works, we keep it. And if it doesn't work, we go back to something that works. And that, I think that mostly happens during the setup time. So, you know, that we are show ready. There's nothing that we would try or do experiments on during the show. That's just, you know, that's a no-go from my point of view.
Yeah, so the festival's ingrained or embedded way of working that at Wednesday at 5 o'clock, all stages needs to be ready.
Correct.
So you have a short window to try out new stuff.
Actually, it's Wednesday, 3 o'clock, because there needs to be a quiet period before they open the gates, because they don't want the people to go crazy, because there's, you know, loud music and funny music coming from the festival side. So, you know, they want the audience to calm down a bit before they open the gates, and then they can go crazy on site, and then, you know, just enjoy. So
yeah. One other great aspect of what we do together is that because of the trust and relationship and working together over a number of years, we also have an X factor in the building, the band and the band's engineer. So for the listeners who aren't accustomed to this, every band typically travels with their own sound engineer who mixes the show. And that's primarily where bad reviews come from regarding sound. Because you guys provide an open framework that we test out in the days up to, and we adjust over year on, year out. So we know coverage is good, and dynamic range and frequency dispersion is in place, so to say. But then I would like to ask you a question about audio quality and the expectations. Who in your mind or in your regard sets those expectations?
the audio quality, that's ourselves.
Yeah.
Because as I said in the beginning, it's like 95% of the people in front of the stage don't care what kind of speaker it is, or, you know, where it's hanging, or how many, how loud it gets. The only thing they want is enjoy the show. And together with the feedback that we receive from people like you, or like the traveling engineers, we try to make it as good as possible. And it's a learning experience, a learning curve every year. And we start to, you know, to have a starting point in as a system EQ that most of the engineers feel comfortable with. And that's just based on experience over the years. And we are at a point where I would say that also 90% of all the traveling engineers are quite happy with what they have when they start, you know, turning up their master faders, because there is no sound check on those stages, or on most on the stages. They really need to trust in the capability of the system, and also what we have done. We have front of house PAs, of course, on every stage, and that they can use to do line checks and maybe small sound checks, but they will not be able to use the main systems. But since the front of house PAs are frequency matched to what is what you will experience or hear later once the main PA is on, it's fairly good, I would say. It's not fairly good, it's pretty good. So we haven't had much negative feedback since, I would say, 2019. 2018 was a special year for everybody, because it was the first time, and, you know, of course we thought it needs to be like this, but it wasn't necessarily. So we changed also that approach in 2019, and since then, overall, was good feedback also from all the traveling engineers.
So would you say that I'm going out on a limb here, but would you say that your experience, the Meyer Sounds as a company and people working in that company experience at the festival has changed some beliefs or pre-notions in Meyer Sound?
Internally?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it changed. Definitely. We grew as a team on site, as a company in general, the way how we approach new products, for example. So, and yeah, it definitely has an impact. So yeah.
That is interesting. So the spark or the seed, the initial idea of having a partnership like this actually benefits both sides of the table when you have an open, trustful dialogue
Yeah.
on improving the experience for the shared customer, who is the audience.
Yeah,
basically.
I agree.
I'm trying to sum up, but it's just fun to think
Yeah.
about it. So, but how do you guys evaluate your work, Dennis?
how we do evaluate the work. I think we talked about it already, with positive and negative feedback, you know, being open-minded for that kind of stuff.
But there's something in this that I don't have access to, and that would be the internal evaluation at Meyer Sound. Because if you guys are being changed or challenged by being in the field at Roskilde, I guess it also sparks some evaluation on the inside. I know for a fact, because I work for the festival, that we always evaluate how to do stuff. Are we doing it the right way, or should we change something?
No, you know, we internally, everything is perfect. It's perfect. Like it's, you know, it's a perfect place to be. No, of course we evaluate everything, every work that we do. It's, you know, it's after, you know, let's say an install that we do. You know, it's the guy who's designing the system mostly also tunes the system because he knows what he wants to achieve. But sometimes when you're on site and you know, then there's an obstacle, there's a pipe in the way or whatever, and then you need to react on site, and then you know it differs from your design idea, and then you need to be able to react on site, and then of course it changes from what your main idea was, and maybe after that, you know, when you start looking at the next design, you will always keep that in mind. It's like, hey, maybe I should ask if there are any obstacles in the way, like evac systems or, you know, lighting fixtures, because your experience at that job or that project showed you that, you know, you have to count that in too. And that's the same with being on site at the festival. You know, you look at drawings, you have the stage drawings in 3D and all of that stuff. We can work in Map 3D and look at all this stuff, but maybe there's a light fixture missing in your drawings. And then when you're on site, there you have a 2 kilowatt Parkan in front of your first 2 line array loudspeakers, you know, that are aimed to shoot 100 meters or 90 meters. Then, you know, you need to have a discussion with the lighting guys or the lighting designer on site, and you can come to a solution on site, and then you keep that in mind for the next year's approach, and you start to communicate that with the festival people to also, you know, keep that in mind. And internally we evaluate you know, our approaches. So what did we learn in the tuning of the systems? Because we have a certain time slot. It's not that we have an infinite amount of time to tune the system or the systems in general. Then, you know, how can we speed it up? What do we need to do? Can we come up with a standard EQ preset, for example? Because we have so many stages in different sizes, but we have a certain target curve that we want to use on all stages to you know, make every stage sound equal. We can then look at our tunings and our, you know, with the analyzers that we use to check, and also because, you know, together with the compass files, so, you know, for our processors, what kind of EQs did we use? So if there's an average that we could see over all stages that are identical, maybe then next year we start with that and take it from there. So maybe the 3-hour tuning session that we had the year before is now down to 15 minutes. So that's stuff that we look at after festivals, of course.
Yeah, and the complexity of having all these stages and about 45 RF techs on site working with you guys. You man each stage with at least one person. There's a lot of professionals involved, and I'm just personally always thinking about how we can gather up all that information, since we're only working really intensely for 7 days each year. There's a lot of stuff that falls between the cracks, I guess. But it's a continued focus, I think.
And I also believe, and at least that's what we've done in the past, is, you know, keep it, you know, once the festival is done, just don't talk about, you know, improvements and your experience directly, you know, 2 days after the festival. Just let it sink for a while, because then your brain starts to you know, sort out the necessary and unnecessary information, and then you know, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, you start sitting down and talk about it, and yeah, gather feedback. It's that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in closing, before I think we should take some questions, if there is any. I have just one last question for you, Dennis. Is that what good advice would you give to other persons or companies about this type of relationship? Is it beneficial? Does it work? Is it something people should look at if and how and when and all that stuff? Any good advice?
From my point of view, yes, it makes absolute sense to have good relationships to the people that you work with, and you know, for me, the most important thing is open, transparent communication. I think that's key. And as I said before too, you need to be open for critics, positive and negative, to be able to grow and make things better. And sometimes you can also start questioning yourself, was that the right decision that I made? And sometimes you get that feedback, that direct feedback from your colleagues on site, and it's just a matter of how you deal with that. And a partnership like this grows over time. It's not working 100% right from the beginning, but there's a level of trust. And if you can rely on that level of trust, I think both parties get better and better over time. And for big projects like this, yes, it makes sense to have that partnership.
And maybe my closing comment for this is pro audio live concert production has been around for maybe 50 years, maybe even less, but at least 50 years. And so there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know about, all the dilemmas or the where stuff meets each other. That could be relationships, or the thing about the traveling sound engineer with the band, who actually gets to decide the level of the sound, who gets to decide the quality of the music, or the quality of the mix, or the quality of compression in the mix, different elements. And we are trying to scratch the surface on each of these dilemmas or problems or exciting stuff to discuss. So I hope that discussion will continue also through Danish Sound Cluster to try to shine more light. I mean, nobody owns the experience but the person itself. But we're trying to improve it, so we have to apply ourselves and be curious. All right, Jeppe, do you see any questions in the chat?
Sure, I have one here. I don't know if you can see the Q&A, but I would love to read it out if you want me to. Yeah, okay. So I have a question from Rune Peter Dunstein. One of the benefits with live music is that the full dynamic range for the individual instrument can be available through a well-adjusted mixer and amplifier system. It's quite of a long question here. So, but in many cases, the audio engineer is reducing the dynamics to make a softer sound. Do Roskilde/Meyer Sound have any recommendations on how much dynamic reduction or compression for the individual stage?
Maybe I can answer that because that relies on as Bruce Springsteen's engineer would say, that's the art department. And that's a subjective choice being made entirely on the basis of the band, what they would like to sound like. And that's why people often travel with their own sound engineers. I try to imagine the idea that the people traveling with the band are the people having the same fancy shoes on as the artist, whereas Meyer Sound or the RF techs are somebody who facilitates the process to a certain extent. And there's maybe a legal line in this, because we actually, as a festival, purchase a band with their own production. And that's kind of sets the limit for what we can do on an individual basis. That's not accessible to the festival. But correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, you guys try to create a sort of a blank canvas for the visiting people to do what they are intending to do. And we have to somehow tap into what they're trying to do and help them out improving what they're trying to do instead of telling them what to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree. Our biggest goal is to basically have a neutral sounding PA system. So what you're sending in is what you're hearing, so that there is no added tonality or something like this, and that's our goal. And I think in the past we have been quite good with not manipulating it too much. There are things that we don't have control of, humidity, temperature, all of that stuff. But I totally agree with, we are not in a position to tell the sound engineer that he is, not allowed to use a certain amount of compression on his master bus. That's a completely artistic decision, and that's totally up to the engineer or to the band how they decide how they want to sound like. So.
Yeah, you can say that they actually chose that sound person to do that sound for them in line. So it's an artistic choice. Whether if I like it or not, that was a choice. So you could also maybe come up with an analogy that says that, Meyer Sound and the RF techs assist the visiting engineer. Use the Formula One car as an example. Oh, if you are to drive this car, maybe don't press down on the gas as much as you would on your own Hyundai. It's not the same style of car, but that's in a different department because that's maybe for more inexperienced engineers. At the top of the line, if you do sound at Orange, you have years and years of experience. It goes without saying that no artist manager would release somebody inexperienced at that position.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, let's take another question if you have nothing to add here. This is a question from Rasmus Rosenberg. It sounds like you guys might be familiar with each other. He says, "Hey guys, good to see you doing good. Can you expand a bit on the Roskilde Festival techs and how to join if possible? And how many of the pre-2018 techs carried over? Any recommendations for other festivals to do similar?" That's actually 3 questions, but
let me try because I think that's in my department, not so much Meyer Sound. Pre-2018, it was more companies or vendors that supplied the gear for the festival. And so those were persons hired by those companies, maybe steady positions or just freelance workers. And I don't have an exact number. I would guess my gut feeling would say that we might have 5 or 7 persons transferring from previous years into these positions. And then the next part of the question. The RF techs is it's a really interesting question about the RF techs because we're trying to build a family, but a family doesn't have to live together all the time. And sometimes one person has to go to the south of Italy to join a university course or whatever. So they won't be able to be part of this year's festival, but they'll be a part of the pool. So in year 1, we put out applications for the ability to apply to work at the festival, which then in turn actually opened up the gates for, in 2018, having the first female professionals working at the festival. From 2017 and all the way backwards to 71, there was no females hired by the festival. So now we have, I believe it's 6 female engineers out of 45, which is, of course, not enough if you have to have an equal gender balance, but at least it's a beginning. And I think that's going to be much more prominent in the years to come, because they figure out that of course, it's technical work, but it's as much social and it's as much something you have to do together with somebody else. And that's, I know for a fact, also working with Rhythmic Music Conservatory, that adds to the curiosity of females, that it's not necessarily a technical aspect. It's much more also an artistic or social process. And then recommending for other festivals to do similar. Well, the size of the festival has the ability to do so. But I know, from what I remember, Turner Festival also does have their own crew and work with having their own crew. So, but it challenges this small Danish world that we live in, with having steady positions at rental companies and then have a lot of freelancers. And you could argue, is it a great thing to be a freelancer because you cannot call in sick, and you have to take care of all your everything all the time. It's my understanding that in foreign countries outside of Denmark, there's a lot more steady positions. You work for a PA company, and that's how you get jobs. Whereas in Denmark, you're much more freelance. So I don't know if I can recommend it to other festivals. For this festival, this setup really has proven to be beneficial.
Okay, good. I personally have a question. Because last year I saw Rosalina at Arena Stage, and I was standing at the edge of the tent, quite far away from the stage, but it sounded like her presence and her vocals was like right in my face. It was pure magic, actually. So I was wondering how much of that is due to the production by the artist, how much of that is due to the speaker placement and the coverage, and how much is the live mix?
Dennis.
Yeah.
Or,
Arena is a special tent. It's so big that I don't know if tent would be the right naming for that. It's more like a cathedral, I would say. What we are trying to do with our design is to prevent shooting into the tent, so into the ceiling, which is a task by itself, because when you're standing at the edge all the way on the back, I don't know the exact opening size, but you really need to aim down to be able to shoot there. But on the sides, it has that effect, of course, because you're shooting down, you will hit the tent no matter what. So there will be reflections of the roof. But we are trying to aim like with a really pinpoint onto those locations to prevent getting reflections of the roof. And that's one thing in arena tent that we try to improve also year after year after year. And now since we are using Panther, our newest large-scale line array product since last year, on all the stages, most of the stages, we have smaller where Panther would be too big, but it's the newest technology. So really, it's perfect horn design, new drivers, new amplification, and all of that stuff. So it's state of the art. So you can't compare this to a product that's like 20 years old, because a lot of stuff has changed.
I can also add to
yeah.
So when you experience audio at the festival, we try to make sure, and it's difficult in what's a tent but not a tent, as Dennis is saying. We try to achieve that the direct audio from the speaker is what you hear, and the addition from the room or the tent or the structure is as minimal as possible. And that is just a huge challenge on a large scale with the capacity of 18,000 plus at Arena. It's a huge thing. And to your question about her vocal being right up front and center, of course, that's a mixing issue as well, because it's somebody actually wanted the vocal to be really loud, I guess. So they compressed the vocal probably and put it out front. And that's also part of the artistic expression of Rosalia, that her voice is really loud in that capacity. So I hope everybody gets an idea of everything coming together to fulfill one goal, minimizing the distance between the listener and the performer, or at least conveying it as truthfully without any obstacles, no pipes, no drapes, no nothing in front of it. And for that, you need clarity and no distortion in the PA system, or distortion in the mixing console on the channels that you want. But that's a user choice and not a system choice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because the magic was to me that the vocal was very loud, but it was still very balanced with everything else. So it was not perceived as necessarily very loud, because it was naturally loud in a way.
And I think that you can that's a testament to the dynamic range and clarity of the Panther system, being able to overcome the acoustics of the tent and still delivering a dynamic range that creates the hierarchy of the mix. So you can actually discern whatever's going on. It's not muddy, it's not coming together, it's not falling apart. In my experience, I really like outdoor venues because there's no obstacles and no interference. But for the solution at Arena, the Panther is really an upgrade since whenever, since forever.
It's the what I've said before. We don't want to add tonality to the mix, so we try to be as neutral as possible. And as neutral as possible also means that we don't want to add distortion. You know, sometimes when you push systems really hard, you know, the high frequency driver starts to distort because it's at the edge of the performance. And Panther has a lot of headroom, so it's capable of you know, having high peak output over, you know, when you are still, let's say, you know, if you have a violin, which is a very dynamic instrument, you can make it sound really, really loud, but you're still always able to put a drum set on top of it, which has high peak levels, really, you know, high dynamics, but it doesn't push the violin away. The violin stays where it is, and you're just able to put something on top of it. And I think that's the same what happened with Rosalia. You were able to push the music to a certain level, but you're always able to put her vocals on top of it. And that's just the performance of that system. It's the capability, the high peak output that system has, without adding distortion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I have a kind of a different question. You were talking about Dennis building a relationship when you collaborate with Roskilde Festival. I was just curious, how much of building a relationship is based on professional chemistry, and how much is based on personal chemistry?
I think we have a good mix of everything, to be honest. And also because our relationships grew over time. It's not that, you know, we met for the first time in 2018. As I said, you know, I had my first time in 2014, but we have, you know, a colleague, Michael, for example, who was at, you know, Roskilde Festival, 15 years ago already. So, you know, this professional relationship between Meyer Sound and Roskilde Festival grew over time until that point when the festival decided now it's time to do the big step. The personal relationship is something that is the same for every time when you meet a new person that you don't know. You have no idea if it's going to work or not. And we are just lucky that we have a chemistry going on between each other that just works. And, you know, the thing is, you know, if you only focus on professional relationship, you will make that work no matter what, because you have to, and you can skip the personal relationship. You know, sometimes you have to work with a person that you can't work with on a personal level. But this is just not the case for our partnership and for everything we do together on Roskilde Festival. So I usually.
Maybe I can add to that, Dennis, that. Oh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. But maybe the thing that makes this succeed also has to do with the fact that we're doing something larger than ourselves. So it's kind of the focus is on the audio quality, and we all hone in on that idea. It is also for benefits on multiple levels. It's a personal joy for me to be in contact with people who are really, really good at what they do. It's a personal joy for me to be in contact with people who are dedicated to their work. And I think that just drives everybody towards it. So we have to accept maybe everybody taking part of it. And maybe I've seen that in some of your American colleagues also, Dennis, that it's just a different beast to be part of something that doesn't hone in on how cheap can we do it, how fast can we do it, efficient, but what can we actually do to if we focus on quality? And quality can transpire into very different areas: quality of life, quality of art, quality of food, or experiences.
And it's rewarding. We had a couple of talks over the last couple of days, but there's also one thing that Bob says, and that I'm 100% standing behind, is the biggest reward for us. What makes us happy most is the direct feedback that you get from the audience when you see the interaction between the artist and the audience. There's, I think, being we choose to work in this environment, and being part of something that makes so many people happy in a millisecond is just amazing. And when you're standing, especially when you're standing at Orange Stage, and you turn around and you just look at the faces once the show starts, and the smiles and the happiness that just pops up like this is just everything that we need. I don't need anything else. And I know it's the same for Bob. And I think it's the same for a front of house engineer when he pushes up his master fader. There's always a certain level of excitement. Maybe you get goosebumps, your adrenaline kicks in, it's you're ready to run the show now. And then you push up the fader, not knowing if what is coming out of the PA is actually what you plan to be. And then it's, the first note hits, and then it's like, oh, the audience is reacting, my mix is good, now we can go on. And that's when when happiness starts to settle in. I think that's what everybody wants. It's just being happy at what you're doing and getting feedback and reward. And you get immediate feedback from music, from live music. And I don't know. It's hard to explain.
One of the teachers that we use at the architect training we just had this week, actually, a psychologist, he would say it like this: it would be ego transcendence. So we move away from what we want and we accept that we're part of something bigger. And that's just rewarding in itself.
Yeah.
On a human level.
Well, I think that's a very, very beautiful note here to kind of wrap things up today. I'm getting goosebumps just hearing you tell about it, Dennis. So thank you very much. I would like to just show you a couple of slides here. Today we have Morten Büchert, Associate Professor at RMC and Project Manager at Roskilde Festival, on the panel with Dennis Tholema, who is Technical Services Manager at Meyer Sound. We are very happy to have you today. Thank you very much. Now, Danish Sound Cluster is a member organization in the sound industry. We are sharing the knowledge and the experience of new research, facilitating relationship building, speaking of relationships between Roskilde and Meyer Sound, and facilitating new collaborations to boost innovation. You can follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn if you want to see many more webinars and loads of other stuff that we are doing. Next up, we have a webinar with Augmented Hearing and Green Waves, talking about real-time audio enhancements. So please go and sign up if you find that interesting. Now, if you want to collaborate, please reach out to us. If you work in the sound field, maybe you work with health and hearing, acoustics or environments, or sound experiences, but please reach out to us. We have loads of collaboration projects, and you can reach out to our project manager, Tine Midgaard. You can find us on our website as well. So please reach out to her if you find that interesting. Now, there's nothing else to say, but thank you for all of you participating in the audience, and thank you, Morten and Dennis. I wish you a very good and happy Roskilde Festival. I hope to maybe see you out there, I don't know. Thank you very much. See you next time.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.